tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to meet.
Welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anshi, and thank you so much for tuning in. Binge on Self-Love podcast is about navigating binge eating disorder struggles, disordered eating, and negative body image. Although I share my personal experience with having a negative body image, eating disorders, and I do uncover bits of my personal story, this podcast is not as much about me as it is about you. Beautiful human beings who struggle, who fight, who grow, and who evolve every single day. This podcast is for anyone who wants to feel supported on their recovery journey and simply for anyone who's trying to improve their relationship with themselves. I believe together we can turn something so negative, such as binge eating, into something more positive and hopefully go from binging on food and self-hatred to binging on self-love. Subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on your favorite platform and tune in every Tuesday for a new episode.
But there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that because you don't know who you're going to meet.
Disclaimer: Binge on Self-Love podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It doesn't provide professional medical advice and it is not a substitute for diagnosis or treatment. In this podcast, we cover the topic of eating disorders, so if you find this topic triggering, it may be better for you not to listen to this podcast. Always make sure to put your mental health first. Hello everyone, welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna, but you can call me Anchi, and I'm back with another episode, so thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I want to talk a little bit about our past and our past selves and about letting go of a certain part of our past that does not serve us anymore, and also about the fact that past does influence us in a way, but we don't have to let that dictate who we will become. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Have you ever noticed how much an environment can affect our behavior? If you put the same person in two different environments with different people, chances are that the same person will behave differently in each of those environments. I was visiting my hometown the other day and I've noticed a massive change, not just in my behavior, but also in what and how I was thinking. And coming back to the quote-unquote old environment has brought back similar feelings, similar thoughts, similar worries like I did and like I used to have a few years ago. And it almost felt like nothing has changed. And it honestly scared me. And maybe you've noticed this yourself, that when you lived somewhere and then you moved somewhere else, or if you had a certain job, and then you quit and you got a new one, that when you change the environment and you are in a new environment, you start to act a little differently. We start to do things a little differently. We adjust to the new environment. And then when we go back to the old environment, being it our hometown, our job, our past relationship, or whatever, we again associate those environments with these old feelings and old behaviors. And visiting my home brought a lot of great memories to me, a lot of positive associations. However, it often also brings back the negative thoughts I've used to have about myself, how I treated my body, and the things that I used to believe in. And it's always just a temporary feeling. And like I said, I do have a lot of positive and loving memories. But I couldn't help but think, will I ever get past this? Will I ever let go of that person that I used to be? And I've realized that in order to become the person that you want to become, we have to let go of who we used to be. We don't, and most importantly, even can't change the past and what we have or haven't done, what decisions we've made, and we will inevitably be affected by our past in some ways. just like we've been influenced by things we do today and what we consume and what people we meet with. But we shouldn't let our past dictate who we will become. I know it probably sounds a little weird, but I just don't think we have to let some label from the past dictate our future. I've had some serious issues with food, and it had a massive impact on who I am today. That's for sure, and I'm not trying to deny that or change that because I can't. But what I can change is what my relationship with both food and myself and my body will be like in the future. I can continue to label myself as a binge eater or someone who used to eat like this or like that. The question is it doing me any good? And if it doesn't, then it's probably time to let it go. The thought that came to my mind when I was back in my hometown was, oh my God, I'm still this silly little girl who loves to eat, who hates herself, who's too shy to say anything, who's too afraid of what may happen, so she doesn't even try to accomplish anything in her life. But it's just not true. It's just my mind in the same old environment repeating the same old thoughts. Just because you were someone in the past, it doesn't mean you have to be like that person in the future if you don't want to. You have a space to change every single day. If you want to be a more active person, then you should start to think more like you actually were an active person. If you continue to tell yourself how lazy or unmotivated you feel, nothing's ever really going to change. The same applies if you continue to tell yourself that you're dumb or a loser. These old labels won't help you to get where you want to be. They won't make you feel any smarter. In order to become the person you want to be, it's necessary to let go of who we were. If I continue to label myself as a failure who always screw things up, then I will probably be one forever. If I continue referring to myself as ugly, then I will probably feel ugly forever. But I can also try to change that and try to think more of who I want to become and try to think more like that person. One more thing that I've noticed is that very often the people who knows us for a long time usually find it difficult to navigate that we've changed in some way, that we've evolved, that we don't have the same beliefs or priorities like we've used to have a few years ago. And that again can make us feel like, okay, so I probably haven't changed at all. They still think the same of me. But what someone else thinks of you doesn't really define whether you have or haven't changed. The change happens inside of you, not in somebody else. So that's all I have for you today. Make sure to subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss any future episodes. I'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, take care and talk to you soon. Bye.
Have to be your biggest fan. And when things are really tough and they're really rough and nothing's working, but there's something inside of you that says, I just have to follow that. Because you don't know who